Hi there, it's Matt. Welcome to another video. I have been going through some things in life. A pertinent subject of my last 3 or 4 videos, actually, is that I have been going through a mental struggle. Now, there's a few things I'd like to discuss, but the main thing is very simply this. It is the passionate soul's need to communicate its ideas and need to communicate its direction mentally, and how that pertains to a mental decline being the epitome of abrasive within your soul. Now, as a fellow person on this planet called Earth, I have underwent my fair share of stress here and there growing up. A common way for me to cope with that stress earlier on in life was simply to bottle it, honestly. It was to lay the macabre hand that I felt bred me, as in guided me in the wrong direction, and simply accept it as one of my own. This was not a prosperous, but instead a poor mindset. Later on, as I reached the age of, say about 16 years old, I started developing independence. And this allowed me to express myself, which gave me prosperity. One of the most important human values ever. Now, the truth is at that time, I felt beautiful about life in a way that I have matched, that I have not completely matched. As you see, I hadn't dealt with schizophrenia yet at that point. That came at 17. And there was something eloquent about me that awoke within me that wasn't there previously. Definitely a huge contrast compared to when I was 14, when I was considered a failure by most of my school peers. Something that bothered me a lot more than I cared to admit. I kept it bottled up, you know. When I exerted my love and passion for speaking when I turned 16 is when I started finding myself and finding that there was truly a passionate soul within me. There were dreams, there was hope, there was love. And what epitomized it quite well is when I went on this smoking session with a friend. And as I got in the car, I just went on a big rant for about an hour straight about the government and how I felt it was ill-conceived and the reality around us being warped and not accommodating our beliefs, being the general subject. Now, a passionate soul is something not all of us inhabit. However, it is something all of us love, I think, under the right metric and circumstance, as we all love creativity and so on. But it isn't always accommodated within the person itself. As you grow older in life, you can start to deal with strenuity. Me, it came surprisingly early. I am not even 24 yet, and I already feel I'm deteriorating, you know? And the point of the mental conundrum I have faced, I think, can be discerned from the beginning of my mental journey of strength and of hope and of happiness and of love, which starts at about 16. As it is of the utmost coincidence, of course, that schizophrenia came soon after. My belief has always been that in this reality, not me, but we are worked against more than we think, in subtle but very real ways. And those eventually grow into sometimes even a disaster within the mind. A colossal experiment is to take place within us, even at times, as we find ways to deviate from the consciousness we once had that we partially lost. And that's called fighting back against the regime that was set forward within you. And that is the epitome of passion, if you think about it. That is the epitome of passion in and of itself. And that is beautiful. Now, passionate speech is love. Passionate ideas are hope. And I believe in hope and love. But what does it really mean to hold such values under strenuous conditions? I'm led to believe, and I wholly believe, mostly believe anyways, that I will mostly live a dead-end future. I won't accomplish much out of myself. And currently I'm in a group housing. This is despite the fact that I inherently have the subconscious thought and, mental thought itself, despite the fact that I don't think thoughts in the very literal sense. But I have the mental thought that I am brilliant. I'm a very brilliant person who has been put against a lot of challenges, barriers. Now, passion has allowed me to see this, as it has been the spark inside of me that has overjoyed me and led me to want to help others and to speak to others. And by speaking, I feel I form a message that is inherently made to help other people, whether it be through understanding my situation or through understanding theirs. This is my ideal goal in life, is to find me. It is to find who I am. Now, the truth is that I know that deep down I have an exuberant amount of joy. It has simply been shoved within my mind and hidden from me. I could be argued as of late to be dealing with partial Alzheimer's. And I'm serious about that. That is excessively rare at my age. Excessively rare. It nearly never happens, not in this way. Because there's a difference between having a poor memory and having memories regress out of your skull, right? Regress out of your mindset. To the point that you cannot think something without feeling worse about yourself. And I think a lot of what this leads to is that despite my optimism, despite my hope, and despite my happiness, there's a bigger picture that wants the opposite from me. This leads to the conundrum that I face in many videos, which is mental health real or fabrication from not your mind, but placation, or I think placation might be the word, it might not, but is it placed in your mind instead of bred from your mind? And I think both hold a lot of value. If you assume that people were designed a long time ago, which they were in my mind, long before we were evolved into being who we are today and before we gain a human shape, then you can easily assume that the world is inherently corrupted. Just like sometimes it could be inherently saved. Because the truth is if there's an outside control, then there's an outside perspective. There's an outside ideal. and there's an outside reality. And I think that's worth considering. Not because it will affect us directly, because the reality is it probably won't at all. I consider myself to be an outlier, maybe a bit grandiose in my thinking there, but my experience has been a bit all too real in that regard. See, I awoke something within me when I beat my schizophrenia. I wholly believe I did. And you know, it's fascinating to me. It's fascinating how it responded. Because mental illness is meant to be independent to the mind. And yet, the way it came back was never seen as independent to my belief. Even when the process began, about 10 months to 11 months ago, I lost count, don't really care. It felt like it was exuberantly for me, then against me, then for me, then against me, but regardless, served to put me through a process that was extremely perilous, in which I consider the whole thing to be a numbers game, counting numbers, but not mathematical equations. I was to remove fragments from my mind, remove what was called demonic interference from my mind, through exercising a game of sorts, where I was to entertain points, so basically numbers. And through that, my hypothesis at the time, and still now, and reality now actually, is that I was being tested. And that created a discerning reality, which is that I was watched, but not in the Truman Show sense. But maybe in a very slight way, yes, but not the whole way. Because the Truman Show, if you don't know it, is a film where someone called Truman is put in which is the actor Jim Carrey, is put in a reality, a world that is created solely for a TV program to take place about him, right? Where he grows up and he lives a life and there's eventful moments and he believes all of them because he's grown up in that world. He doesn't know anything else. And at the end, it's revealed to all be a lie and he eventually escapes that reality. It's a beautiful ending. And that leaves me wondering. And, I'm not a very narcissistic person, believe it or not. I have traits, I do. I went into that in the last video. But, not very narcissistic. I'm not a grandiose thinker. I'm very humble in my root. But yet I think this shit, right? To me, it's a credit. It credits my experience. To you, you might think I'm deluded. Or probably do, but maybe don't. Assuming you are open-minded. The connection that this has to my mind in of itself is the results of my inherent deterioration and my passion's fruitful cause and reason, leading to a need from the outside for it to be exterminated from me, despite the fact that it seems a lot of souls that are around me, a lot of people, actually want it saved. And schizophrenia tends to be in agreement with itself. I just find it silly to even bring up the topic in a way, even though I think I deal with it, but that's a different story. People want me saved, people want me gone. But it is in a unanimous agreement. It is painted to be a unanimous agreement. But in the background and at the forefront most of the way, some people disagree, some people agree. And what I find fascinating the most about it all is that it's often painted to me that all of this, as part of the schizophrenic conundrum, which would be to simply work to lessen the mind. All of this is simply for that end. But yet there are constant insinuations of living past my life. And mentions and statements of living past my life. And the reality is, I think I love the revelations I've went through. I appreciate the love I've been given, but I hate the situation I am in. How the topic of an afterlife correlates to my reality? Well, it doesn't in the public sphere. In the religious end of things, it kind of does. But that's a very peaceful, prosperous sector for the most part, which very well is potentially my situation here, like it very well potentially is not. Because apparently, as said by the voices in my head itself, by simply being a good person, I've pissed off the wrong people. Or by fighting against the status quo that was set upon me and forced upon my mental and forced upon my thinking, and deciphering a way to unlock it from my mind. That's a better way to put it. And it seems overly cynical. But then you kind of start to realize that maybe our world is. Maybe we're just very passionate people. We're very real people, you know? Within that mindset of cynicism and within that mindset of everything detracting from itself in order for the attraction, in order for the additions to be slightly lesser. Like the government's attempts to make things better while slightly making things worse. Everything is a compromise in life. People are not ultimately happy. There's always mental health. You start to realize that maybe everything is a pen and paper game, as in something that in the grander scheme, since there would be a lot of planets under my hypothesis, it wouldn't be taken as serious as it should be. I think that's blasphemous, but you know, I think it's true as well. My mind is optimistic, I can tell. And I believe in optimism being the key to what I should feel and what I should be and who I should be. But it's hard to not feel daily stress. It's hard to not feel a daily measure of regret. It's hard to not feel constant blasphemy within myself. It really is. A video that diverted again. This time it was at about 10 minutes. Better than expected. Sorry for the optimistic turned pessimistic view that I always lean toward, or that I often do. Although sometimes I just forget the optimism and go straight for the pessimism. I've been struggling a lot. With thoughts on life. And to tell the truth, I love you. I'll always love you. More than I do myself. But I love myself. I do. I think I'm a great guy. I just, I'm struggling. Because maybe, just maybe, at the end of the day, there's a point in finding valor and hope in life itself, despite the fact that you don't feel you have been dealt the best cards. And just the idea of actually being yourself and of actually finding yourself and of loving yourself is beautiful. And I try every day. You are brilliant. I just can't take it when you find you are much smarter and funnier than you are, as a voice speaking to me just now. Sounds inherently nonsensical. as a statement, given I never really brag. I kind of do, but not in that way. I don't think I'm a very funny guy. I think I'm a very real guy. But, you know, they speak to me. They do. And it's discouraging. Because then I'm told you can only listen to music 4 hours a day. Otherwise, we'll put audio hallucinations in your head. And it is framed as a test. But it never truly becomes reality. Goodbye.